Means that do it. Burger
Welcome to episode 7 of Airchecks. I'm your host, Ty Rosenow. Billy Butlin was a man before his time in the 1930s. It kicked off Butlin's holiday camps to provide, quote, a week's holiday for a week's pay, unquote, for a cash-strapped Brit. Scroll on to the present day and our economic picture looks remarkably similar. In this program, Liza Tarbuck pays tribute to British holiday camps, hearing from some of the most famous graduates, including Johnny Ball, Russell Grant, Alvin Stardust, and Status Quo. Holiday camps are often sneered at, yet 1 in 4 of us have been on to one, and they've served as a vital training ground for some of our best beloved entertainers. Butlin's came first and once served a million holiday makers a year. This is where the red coat was born. These iconic camp hosts were later interpreted as blue coats by Poitlands and yellow coats in the BBC holiday camp parody Hi-de Hi, and provided us with some of the best loved entertainers. Famous former holiday campers include Des O'Connor, Shane Ritchie, Bobby Davro, Dave Allen, Johnny Ball, and Isla St. Clair. And right now, the stars of the future are trying to eke out a reputation on these same stages. This is the school of hard knocks for performers. If you can win over a holiday camp crowd, it's widely acknowledged you can win over anyone. In Happy Campers, Liza Tarbuck finally gives the classic British holiday a fair appraisal. The program takes a trip to sunny Bangor, a wander through the archives, and relates some of the unforgettable holiday camp experiences from those who know them best.
Another good Butlin morning is here to begin the day. Wake up, and meet the fun halfway.
Think of holiday camps, and you might think of Hi-de Hi, red coats, yellow coats and blue coats, regimented sing-songs, 3 meals a day and a slightly overarching naffness.
Right then, centre stage, we are literally 10 minutes away now from meeting your stars in the X Factor and Britain's Got Talent. The question is, are you ready for it tonight, everybody?
We have a slightly awkward relationship with holiday camps, so now, to mark 30 years since the passing of Sir Billy Butlin himself, perhaps it's time to reappraise their importance. My name's Liza Tarbuck, and you're listening to Happy Campers.
You can swim if you want to, or dance if you want to, have fun and be as gay as you can be.
Everything is here for a wonderful time.
Butlin knew that many of these people were having holidays away from home for the first time, and it's hard to imagine now, we're all so well travelled, that it's hard to imagine what that actually meant.
Right to this day, I can visualise the picture of arriving at Skegness on the train.
It meant people buying or borrowing, in most cases, their first suitcase.
And we all carried our bags. There's no such thing as taxis and things like that. You can smell the air, and it's different.
In some ways, it must have been an overwhelming experience.
And then suddenly we saw the sea, and these, like a massive swimming pool with blue water in. We didn't realise, of course, it was the colour they'd painted the swimming pool.
And then from then on, they were looked after. They would be taken to their chalets, and then they would be given a time to head off for their meals.
I suppose it's the equivalent of taking kids to Disneyland now.
Alvin Stardust's early connection with holiday camps was to lead to a lifetime in showbiz, more of which later, but today's camps still aim to create a dazzling first impression. Once that might have come from painting the swimming pool blue, but today the stars of reality TV draw in the crowds.
If you're ready to meet your stars, everyone put your arms in the air, come on, 2 arms in the air, shake it!
And it's not just the acts that are touched by the hand of celebrity.
My name is Ronnie. I've been a redcoat here at Butlins Bognor Regis for 6 years now, and I've now worked my way up to be redcoat team leader. I have to say, it was my first time away from home. I spent my first night in tears going, I'm not going to make it past tomorrow, I want to come home. 5, 6 years later, I'm still here, and these guys become your friends, your family. I think it took a couple of weeks to figure out that I was a redcoat. I used to look in the mirror and go, oh my God, I'm a redcoat, that's really strange. So yeah, it's almost like being famous. The kids will just fly at you, hug you, they'll sit on your lap and they'll just tug you and pull you around, but you know, to them, you can be their idol. They'll come back specifically to see you. They'll collect your autographs. I've got some people that have had my autograph since 2005.
Johnny Ball's story begins 50 years earlier. Better known as the man who made maths appealing, Johnny started out as a redcoat. The entertainment then was a little more low-tech, but his quest to work at a holiday camp reflects Ronnie's present-day experiences.
I decided when I was 14 I would be a Butlin redcoat, almost certainly. So when I was 21 and I came out of the forces, and I passed the audition, and I went to Pwllheli in North Wales, 60, 61 and 62. But after 61, I also did the winter for them at Blackpool, because I played the drums and I was a budding comedian already, and they needed people who could entertain. Yeah, I played the drums, packed them in, and now I only play with big bands like the Buddy Rich band here. That's him.
It was a nice getting the uniform. That's always quite exciting the first time you get it and try it on, but when you first wear it and walk out, everyone looks at you and you just go, yes, I'm a redcoat.
I used to go to the shops and I would go in my redcoat, and it never occurred to me. Except, no, it did really. That was a bit flash. It was a bit, yes, notice. Oh, you noticed me. How come? How do you notice me? Oh, it's this red jacket. Oh, yeah. The first thing that people came to Butlins found, they got there and people came in and they were always rather like people at an airport. You're standing around, you're not knowing where to go. But you did gag around them. You did try to show them that you're going to have fun with them. You did do all kinds of silly pranks. You know, we turned into Daleks and go, and like a zombie start walking towards her. And if she tried to move anyway, you go and scare them to death.
This is Radio Butlin calling all campers. Good morning, everyone. This is one of your resident announcers, Joy Leggett, telling you that the time is just after 7:45. It's a lovely morning and it's time to get up. We do hope you all have a really happy day in store for you.
Billy Butlin had this idea that he could provide everything people need, absolutely everything they need. They'd come in the camp and they wouldn't need to leave the camp until they went home the following Saturday.
The customer is always right with me. We try and give them what we think they would like, and we're not interested a bit in giving them what we think they should have.
The success of Butlins was huge, and for the man in the street, I think it was quite an aspirational thing to take your holiday at Butlins.
Dr. Catherine Ferry is our national beach hut expert and has an enduring fascination with all things seaside related.
What I think we find very difficult to comprehend these days about holiday camps is that those built in the 1930s were seen as incredibly glamorous. It was really like taking people to another land.
People like Butlin, who had imagination, said, well, people don't just want to have a drink in a bar, why not transport them to a Viennese ballroom? They don't just want to swim in a basic sort of municipal pool, why not decorate it so it's as if they're on a tropical island? So the whole thing really became a place of make-believe. They were designed as places of make-believe.
The best example of that is actually at the Middleton Tower holiday camp, just north of Morecambe, where the owner, Harry Camier, built his holiday camp, the main dining hall, in the shape of an ocean liner. So if you saw it from the sea, it looked like it was this sort of great big beached ship. Absolutely incredible.
It was just like going to watch a film in Technicolor, which was in stark contrast with the grey surroundings that they knew every day, and which they could enjoy and just step out of the real world, in this case for a week at a time.
It's very hard to picture a time when holiday camps would have been the epitome of glamour. After all, we've seen Heidi High, and overseas travel has increased tenfold in the last 30 years alone. But while Billy Butlin opened his first camp in Skegness in 1936, holiday camps really took off in the post-war years. To properly get a grasp on their appeal, we need to remember just how uncheery a place we lived in back then.
Good evening, campers. This is Billy Thorburn speaking from the Prince's Ballroom. Entering this ballroom now are over 2,000 campers in one long line, all singing that famous song, Penny on the Drum.
When I was a baby and my mum and dad were living on the Mile End Road, it was like a one up and one down, and there were like 10 or 11 kids. The babies were put to bed first upstairs in the one bedroom on greatcoats, you know, big overcoats on the floor or blankets, and then the older you were, you went to bed later, so you slept by the door because you were first up to go to work.
Heidi High!
Heidi Ho!
May we have a little truce, please, campers? Thank you.
And of course we all had the old thing like toilets and outside, and I mean it sounds like a third world country, but it pretty well was when you think that's what it was like. Old Bill Butlin's made a fortune out of it, of course, because he was catering for people that needed something would save everything to go away. And I mean, I've got a picture on in our house now on the wall of my mum, my nan, my granddad, and all my aunties and uncles outside her house. And it wasn't their house, but the photographer put them outside a really nice Victorian front, took a photograph of them so that they looked a little bit affluent. But when you look close, all the kids have got shoes and stockings painted on. They're not actually wearing shoes because you couldn't afford them. So that's what was going on when the holiday camps really took off.
I think probably Butlins became an institution because of the Second World War. The UK has always been isolated because of the Channel. And I think the Second World War, we were incredibly isolated. And that was my childhood. I was born in 1938. So there was something insular about the Brits from the Second World War. That feeling of getting by with, frankly, the minimum. Minimum in terms of a chalet and a bed and a sink in the corner and a waste bucket with a hole in it. You always had a waste bucket with a hole in it to stop people peeing in it. but it was a basic thing and it drew people together.
But along with the economic bleakness of post-war Britain, we related very differently to our neighbours and co-workers. With no Twitter or Facebook or even EastEnders to distract us, we had to talk to each other. Here's Professor Dennis Hardy.
Let me try and explain then why people chose to have their holidays with so many other people. At about that time, and for a century before, most people who would come to camps had lived in quite tight-knit communities. Then, just after the Second World War, there was a huge boom in holiday making. The numbers absolutely escalated, and it seemed only natural that they should then go away and spend their holidays together, just like they had spent the war years together.
Alvin Stardust was one of these people, and his holiday camp experience inadvertently set him on his future career path.
All my family used to meet at weekends down in London because they couldn't afford to go out to the cinema and place in theatres and that. And we used to sit in the parlour and everyone used to sing songs. So my first thing was a guitar, was an instrument at all really. The first thing I learned was an Eddie Cochran song, which I did, and we went to Butlins for the weekend because that's all we could afford. And there was a talent contest on, and because I took my little guitar everywhere with me, so I got up and I sang this song. I'm gonna raise a fuss, I'm gonna raise a holler. Been working all summer just to try to raise a dollar. Every time I call my baby, try to get a date, my boss says, "No die, son, you gotta work late." Sometimes I wonder what I'm gonna do, but there ain't no cure for the summertime blues. And it kind of went on like that, and at the end of the day, I won the competition. So the prize was a free week's holiday for you and your family. So we went back on this holiday and I entered the competition again and won it again, so we got another holiday. After about 4 holidays we were kind of up to the ears with it, you know, so I didn't enter the contest anymore after that.
But Alvin doesn't underestimate the importance of this formative holiday camp experience. Without it, his life might have turned out very differently.
To get there and suddenly be able to get up and do something that we'd only ever dreamt of or seen on posters, you know, be on stage with a microphone. So I think that must have been a real inspiration and a kind of bedrock to build a, you know, a future career on. I just want you. I really love the things that you do. Come on and love for me too. Or won't you be my cuckoo?
Before holiday camps, holidays were a luxury that much of the British public simply couldn't afford. Travel writer Simon Calder.
Of course, the rich had always been off on their grand tours, but for the vast majority of the working class, they simply didn't get a holiday, which is why Sir Billy Butlin was so crucial. What he did was basically lobby like mad for the Holidays with Pay Act, and shortly before World War II broke out, it was passed.
Prior to this, we'd approached traditional British seaside holidays rather differently.
What are you going to do in Brighton today?
Oh, have a good old knees up.
What's your idea of a really good day out by the seaside?
Paddle our feet in the sea. And nice space to Jelly Deal.
What's your idea of a good day out?
Well, a good soaking inside as well as out.
And prior to holiday camps, the alternatives weren't great.
One of the things which gave rise to holiday camps was a very strange British institution called the Seaside Landlady in the boarding house.
No animals, smoking or alcohol allowed.
The landlady became a bit of a butt of musical jokes. It was a bit like the mother-in-law.
Small children, under 2 feet, 3d. Evening meal at 5:30 prompt. Use of cruet extra.
Billy Butlin saw what was happening and he thought there must be a better way of organising holidays.
Being at the seaside and visiting the various seaside towns, I spoke to quite a lot of people, and I could see that the general standard of holiday accommodation wasn't very good. They were crowded in, there was no sort of amenities for them. If it rained, they were out looking miserable in the shelters. And I thought, if I could only raise enough money or get enough backing to build a complete little holiday village, I thought it would be bound to be a success.
And Butlin introduced the first holiday camp in 1936 in Skegness, and that was really the start of his whole venture, which was to last and really was to characterise an important part of the holiday market for the next 30 or 40 years.
Now is the time to think about your holiday. Butlins opens the door to a new world of excitement, fashioned to suit your particular holiday.
And it seemed like this was actually a new kind of social phenomenon. The idea that you could actually pay a one-off fee and have everything included in that, your accommodation, your meals, your entertainment, and the range of activities that you could partake in.
From the refreshing tingle of the swimming pool to the freshness of beautiful gardens.
And that was just something new and exciting, I suppose.
Dr. Catherine Ferry. Another innovation of holiday camps was that they deliberately appealed to children.
This is Butlin's Calling All Children, calling you to the happiest holiday of your life. There are so many wonderful things to do, like this trampoline, for instance. You can actually have a go yourself, just like a real acrobat.
Billy Butlin and his competitors realised that if you kept children happy, the grown-ups would be happy too. Surprisingly, nobody had really sussed this before. Free childcare came as standard, and there were endless child-focused activities.
They employed people specifically to cater to children's needs. There were they called them aunties and uncles, who were charged with looking after young kids, and then there were nurseries for the real babies. And there was a chalet service that Billy Butlin introduced, where you could actually leave your child asleep in bed, go out and enjoy the entertainments, and nurses on bicycles would ride around the chalets listening for the sounds of children crying and go in and try and calm the children down. And if that didn't work, they would then send a message through to wherever the parents were, and this could interrupt some of the entertainments.
Hello, campers. This is Radio Butlin with a very important announcement. There is a baby crying in Chalet C16 East Camp. Will Mrs. Roberts please go to Chalet C16 South Camp, where her baby is crying and the tears are coming out under the door.
If anyone that's running the holiday hotel or whatever they're running can get the children happy, then the parents are happy.
But this notion of a holiday for all the family wasn't one that appealed to everyone. Here's Billy Butlin responding to questions on a 1958 BBC radio programme called Matters of Moment.
Well, Mr. Butlin, you don't think a holiday with children is a contradiction in terms?
No, not if you can go away and leave your children for someone else to look after and have a second honeymoon, which you can do at many hotels.
Plus your brood of children.
But at the majority of hotels and boarding houses in this country, if you take children, you're looked down on considerably, and you get the feeling that you should have left them at home in a dog kennel.
Well, that depends on the hotel, I suppose.
Quite. A nonplussed response from Sir Billy Butlin there, but hardly untypical of the snooty views he faced as his holiday camp empire and his own personal reputation grew and grew.
I imagine many of us are puzzled by the undoubted popularity of holiday camps, Mr. Butlin.
It's obviously you've never been to a holiday camp.
Of course, keeping grown-ups and children happy is no easy thing. Much of the responsibility fell to redcoats, those ever-cheery camp helpmates. Their role has changed little in almost 75 years. Matt Rake is the entertainments manager at Butlin's Bognor Regis.
The Redcoats' role is to host, to entertain, to interact, and really guide our families on through a journey of their holiday.
And that journey is carried out in exacting fashion. Being a redcoat was, and is, no easy task, not least because of the high standards imposed by Sir Billy himself. Here's Ronnie, redcoat team leader at Bognor Regis.
We are seen as an idol, we have to be immaculate, so there's quite a few little simple rules for a redcoat that you'd need to follow. Just general clean and tidiness, hair and makeup, always try and be immaculate, and nails, etc.
So do not wear hats, ribbons, hairbands, earrings, necklaces or costume jewellery.
You can have a bad day, you can wake up in a bad mood, but you really have to just take a look in the mirror, think I'm so lucky to be in this job, and choose that attitude of I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make some people's holidays.
Mix with as many guests as possible. Do not single out the young and attractive partners all the time. Think of the lonely guests.
Every guest can be different, so you have to try and judge them when you get there. You never know. Some guests have been before and know what to expect from a redcoat, and other guests have never been and they're a bit afraid of the redcoat.
Do not congregate in groups of redcoats. Never dance with staff, and always prevent men from dancing together.
And the main thing is, I guess, obviously no swearing.
Of course, the iconic redcoat was instantly identifiable. Other holiday camps adopted their own versions, such as Pontin's blue coats and Warner's green coats, but the redcoats came first. Red blazer, white flannel trousers or skirt, and white shoes, and one British holidaymakers feel very proprietorial about. Take designer Wayne Hemingway, for example, a lifelong fan of holiday camps. He believes we tinker with tradition at our peril.
I've seen some very sad things at holiday camps in the last few years, and that's somebody who should have been wearing a nice, smart, brightly coloured blazer wearing a fleece, and that is unforgivable. Windy or not, fleeces and holiday camps don't go together. It's smart hair, preferably off the collar. It's for certain a bright coloured blazer with a decent badge on it, probably with a shirt on, possibly with a tie on or a dicky bow, slim trousers and highly polished shoes. That should be the rule. That's what we expect. You know, I saw in one camp a couple of summers ago probably the ultimate combination that could spark the death of that particular holiday camp. It was 3/4 length trousers, white trainers, no socks, totally and utterly wrong, a fleece and a generic t-shirt underneath. Not good, not right. Just in fact wrong.
Getting the uniform right was just one challenge. It was a system that ran like clockwork and was overseen by Billy himself until his late 60s. It says a lot about the man. Billy Butlin was born in South Africa in 1899. His dad William was a clergyman and his mum Bertha was the daughter of a travelling showman. The marriage floundered, and when Bertha married again it meant relocating to Canada. But Billy's English accent made it difficult for him to settle. He arrived back in Britain in 1921 with just £5 in his pocket. This was to be the start of big things. He tracked down his showground family and leased himself a hoopla stall. Alvin Stardust.
And he didn't know really what he was doing, but he knew he had to get money in. So he made all the hoops on the hoopla stall bigger than the blocks, so everyone won. And all the people that were watching, all the fellow stallholders, at the end of the day saw him and they said, "No, where's all your prizes, all your teddy bears?" And he said, "Oh, well, they've won them all." They said, "Where are you going now?" He said, "Well, I'm going down to buy some more from the wholesalers." And they said, "What are you going to buy it with?" And he held up this big bag of cash.
I'm Lisa Tarbuck and this is Happy Campers, the story of Britain's holiday camps on BBC Radio 2. Billy Butlin wasn't the first person to come up with the idea of a holiday camp. They'd begun in 1894 with the Cunningham Young Men's Holiday Camp on the Isle of Man. There you could enjoy your very own candle-lit tent, along with washing facilities housed in a miniature castle. But clearly there was a gap in the market. Here's Dennis Hardy.
It's rather like looking at a corner shop and then thinking of a supermarket. Butlin really was the holiday supermarket man.
Warner's offered something quite different. They were set up in the early 1930s by Captain Harry Warner with the first camp on Hayling Island, and his philosophy was to have a smaller camp in every case. And when Fred Ponting came on the scene after the Second World War, he was trying to do a cheaper alternative to Butlin's.
And they followed a very similar pattern. They copied each other, I think, with the best ideas. I think the only difference is that neither Ponting nor Warner had quite the entrepreneurial skills of Butlin and didn't achieve the scale of operation of Butlin. In 1946, when people flocked to the sea, 1 in 20 of that population went to a Butlin's camp. And what was more, a lot of them were turned away. I think something like 200,000 couldn't find a place.
To sort of capture the difference of holiday camps, a lot of them came up with their own sort of distinctive mottos, and probably the best known one is "Our true intent is all for your delight." And that was written in red neon letters across the front of the main reception blocks at Butlin's holiday camps. It absolutely encapsulates this idea of everything being there for the holidaymaker's pleasure and just forgetting the everyday workaday world.
And how about yourself, Mr. Butlin? What sort of holidays do you like yourself?
Well, for years I've thought that when I had a real holiday, I would get away quarterly by myself. I tried that last September. I went deer stalking in Scotland. After about 2 days, I was very bored.
And what are you doing this bank holiday?
I shall spend my ideal holiday. I shall visit my holiday camps and see if my theories for this year's entertainment are working out as they should.
Butlin's perfectionism slipped into every aspect of his life, and he was never short of an idea or two when it came to a bit of self-promotion.
There's an amusing little story at Skegness of one of the events that he organised, and it was really to celebrate famous English batsman Len Hutton, who got a triple century against the Australians. And Butlin immediately invited him up so that he'd come onto the stage and that he would bat with a stick of Skegness rock against the bowling of the Lancashire singer Gracie Fields. His son, Bobby Butlin, regarded his father, I think, as something of a taskmaster. As far as the public persona went, Billy Butlin attracted a kind of celebrity status.
Good evening and welcome again to This Is Your Life. A strange way to start our program with a film of a wedding that took place at 2:30 this afternoon. Perhaps you've just seen it in the news. The famous groom was invited to a very private celebration, and so are we. W.E., Billy Butlin, M.B.E., This Is Your Life.
He was lauded by the high and mighty of the country, really. But I think those who worked for him knew what a tough man he was, and I think woe betide anybody who stepped out of line.
And that's what ensured his success. It has to be said that the sort of family man image that he portrayed was not absolutely truthful, because his family life was complicated to say the least, having 3 wives in relatively quick succession, and the first 2 being sisters.
Your bride of today, Nora Butlin.
Never trust your wife.
You can trust me always, darling.
But he came across as this very jovial figure, and I think people really believed that, and that was a crucial part of the attraction of the business, why the brand was so popular.
Yes, Butlin's by the Sea is a super place for a holiday. You can go to Filey, Skegness, Clacton, Bognor, Minehead, Pwllheli, Mosney in Arth. And there, for free colour brochure, write Butlin's, Oxford Street, London.
Butlin went for big camps where he could get a lot of people paying their way so that he could pay for the best entertainers. And a lot of the redcoats who would be there as a sort of guides and helpmates to all the campers.
One of these helpmates was actor and astrologer Russell Grant. The role taught him how to make the best of even the most challenging situations.
I was working down in Cardiff in a fantastic pantomime, and I didn't realise, but that particular day there was a talent scout in one of the performances, and he contacted me afterwards and basically said, would you come and appear at Doonfoot in Ayr, the big Butlins camp up there? And I wasn't sure, to be perfectly honest with you. The money was atrocious. It was £6 a week, although one should say that this was the 1970s. I used to have to run the talent contest, and I never forget this. There were loads and loads of these fantastic, and I really, really mean this, the Glaswegian women were brilliant. But what was it about two songs? The two songs that they sang was, you know that someday you'll want me to want you.
When I'm in love with somebody else, you
And that's how it went. And the other song was this one, love me with all of your heart, that's all I want, love.
love me with all of your heart, or not at all.
They were the two numbers. And the big hit of that year was Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. This particular night, we got hit by lightning, and as I'm not joking, as I'm singing Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, the whole roof caved in. Not only did I get raindrops on my head, I got the whole roof of the Continental Bar on me nut as well.
Raindrops keep falling on my head, and just like the guy which he thought too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops are falling on my head, they keep falling. So I just did me some talking to the sun, and I said I didn't like the way he got things done, sleeping on the job. Those raindrops are falling on my head, they keep falling. But there's one thing.
Of course, falling masonry would be an obstacle for any redcoat, but possibly not as formidable as one of the most dreaded tasks of all.
The biggest thing that I used to do was, I think it was because many people who were there had trained as actors, but I was asked to do the bingo.
Eyes down, look in. Your first number is 1 and 6, 16.
And my goodness, I never forget. I mean, you learn all of these sprauncy things like, you know, legs 11 and...
Doctor's orders, number 9.
But I tell you, if you took too long, all of the ladies, and they were mainly ladies in that theatre, they would lynch you. They took bingo so seriously that you couldn't do too much of 5 and 9, the Brighton line. You couldn't do too much of Two Little Ducks. Well, they'd let that one get through, and the other one they always liked to get through was Two Fat Ladies. I don't know why, but lots of people would not move from that theatre, and the bingo was always packed. It was absolutely chocker.
A very good morning to everybody in the House of Kents. My name is Chris, I'm your house captain, and myself and all the other redcoats you see around the dining hall are here to help or assist you in any way that they possibly can.
The very nature of a holiday camp, with everything included in a one-off fee, meant that meal times, entertainment, competitions, and even the occasional church service had to run like clockwork.
Now, this morning, before we come to the entertainment programme, I would like to remind you that at 11 o'clock in the Playhouse Theatre, there's Mass for Roman Catholics, and at 10:15 in the Gaiety Theatre, a campus holiday service.
And try as you might, competitions were impossible to avoid. There was no limit to the absurdity of the challenges.
In a world where entertainers are often the highest paid among us, it's interesting to find that quite ordinary people who've never been in the limelight before are natural comics. To prove our point, we introduce a new sport, pram racing. You won't find pram racing in any of the sporting handbooks, but although it has its share of hazards for the inexperienced, it has all the thrills, spills, and entertainment of the better-known events. In fact, at this makeshift racecourse, the only thing missing is the bookies' enclosure.
Johnny Ball.
When it was raining, we'd have things indoors. So I've got pictures here of me judging the Nobilinese. Well, the Nobilinese are there, but then we get their wives out, and their wives would had to get down on their knees in front of their husbands with their knees showing on the stage, and they would have to bow and say, "I bow to thee, O Nobilinese, and I will always try to please." And between each sentence, their head went down to the floor. Because I know in my heart, and I know in my mind, that I have got a stuck-up behind. And I mean, it was just pure fun.
We did do such things as Glamorous Grandmother, we did do such things as Knobbly Knees, and we did do such things as Bonnie Babies, but that was where I learned a very big lesson. This was Venus de Milo, but with little short stubby arms. And if you knocked that kid out of the Bonnie Baby, then your name was mud. And I know that a couple of friends of mine used to get, I wouldn't say poison pen letters, but they would get little notes underneath their chalet door saying, you want to watch yourself because you knocked out my baby. And that's how serious it got. And to this day, when anyone ever rings me up to do a personal appearance and say, would you do a Bunny Baby or would you do a fancy dress, I go, no. I don't mind comparing it, I don't mind emceeing it, I don't mind hosting it, but I am absolutely not going to judge it.
Your name down on every page, say hey, good looking. Well, now what you got cooking? Well, how's about cooking something up for me?
A less risky potential challenge was being part of the house band. They'd entertain campers with a variety of family-friendly music, and for many, it allowed them to earn a regular wage until they could go on to greater things. Francis Rossi was one of them. Before making it with Status Quo, he was part of the residential band at Butlins in Minehead.
Oh, I don't know what that is. Well, no. Oh, it's cauliflower soup, that's nice. I'm getting hungry again. Morning.
Needless to say, the Quo are on the road.
We are somewhere up in Sweden. It just goes on and on and on. You just wake up, where are we today? And it's quite pleasant today. I'd started the band with Adam Lancaster, who's in Australia these days, and things were going quite well until 65, and we got this contract to work at Butlins in 65, which was quite a thing in those days. And we went in there, and within a couple of days or so, met Rick, who was in a cabaret kind of act. That's when we got to know Rick, and Rick came in and watched us in the afternoon. We did 2 shows a day. He said to us later on, he said, that's what I want to do. And he joined about 2 years later. We became friends and things were going on, and he joined about 1967. Everything we have now, we always really, really wanted badly when we were younger. We just never thought that you'd get to 61 and this is sort of uncharted territory again. You know, the bands haven't been this old and done this before. And it's quite, I want to see how long it can go, really. But while Uncle Mick and Uncle Keith keep going out on tour, I'm sure Quo will.
And Quo weren't the only successful band to get a kick-start at Butlins. In 1958, a precocious young talent graced the stage in his first professional appearance. Here's a rare recording of that residency at Butlins in Clacton-on-Sea.
Well, I was to a party in the county jail. Written by my dad, they began to well. Just to get your pet and the band began to swing. Should have heard him knock that shell, but she was left rough. was rough. Hey, everybody on Sugar Block was dancing to the Teardrop Rock.
Can you guess who it is? No, not Elvis. It's our very own Cliff Richard. He and his band The Drifters were booked for a month and paid just £25 a week. And in just 5 years, he became the world's biggest selling artist. An impressive achievement, but one arguably eclipsed by a certain other Butlins graduate.
Well, when I was there, the rock and roll band were resident, and it was Roy Storm and the Hurricanes from Liverpool.
Beautiful dreamer, wake up to me. Well, you know, pretty baby, I'm on my bended knee.
And they were the best show band around in that area. And so they were very strong. And of course Ringo was on the drums.
Beautiful dreamer, come on now, wake up to me.
Yes, Ringo Starr of little-known band The Beatles was part of Rory Storm and the Hurricanes for 3 consecutive Butlin summer seasons. They started at Pwllheli in Wales in 1960, and it was here that Johnny Ball first made his acquaintance.
I was in the rock and roll ballroom one day, and I got on the drums and I started playing, and there was nobody there. And after about half an hour with sweat flying in every direction, there's a guy watching me from across the room. And when I finished, he started to get on the stage. And I said, "You can't get up here, mate, you shake my bloody drums." And it was Ringo Starr. And we had a long chat, and that's when I met Ringo. And they used to have Saturday off and come back for Sunday night, but he was always late. And out went the call for me to play, and I played the first set of their 2-hour set. And he would be there for the second set. And he knew that would happen. So from then on, I played the first set and he played the second set.
Beautiful dreamer, in my misery. Beautiful dreamer, come on now, wake, yeah.
After 2 years at Pwllheli, Ringo signed up for the summer season at Butlins in Skegness. It was here that John Lennon and Paul McCartney came to visit him to discuss working together. And shortly afterwards he joined the Beatles and left holiday camps for good. He wasn't the only Beatle to succumb to Butlinism. Paul McCartney claims that the first song he ever sang in public was Long Tall Sally at a Butlins talent contest. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Last night I said these words to my girl. I know you never even tried, girl. Come on, 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 come on. Please, 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 oh yeah, like I please you.
Working at a holiday camp provided a valuable foot on the ladder to a showbiz career. And during the boom period of the 50s and 60s, many influential performers cut their teeth this way.
And of course, you have your picture taken with the kids, all the kids, and you became a sort of a role model and idol for the kids when you were a redcoat. But that's what happened to me. When I was 14, I went to Pwllheli, Butlins, and there was a redcoat there as my house captain, and I thought he was funny, and it was hysterical, and he would do jokes like, "This is the pig and whistle, it's where the pigs go to whistle. This is the palm court, so called because the door's got a strong spring, and if you're not careful as you go in, the door slams and you get your palm court." And that was Des O'Connor. He was probably about 21, I think he'd just come out of the forces.
I went, while I was in the Air Force, to a holiday camp for a week, and I won a talent contest there. And so they said, would you like to come back here as a redcoat, which I did when I left the Air Force. And I had 2 years at the camps there. Great grounding, wonderful grounding.
And so there you are, 7 years later, I said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to follow him. And I followed his career.
It was an influential stint for Des too. Whilst making a big impression on the young Johnny Ball, he fell foul of Billy Butlin's rigorous standards, with material deemed to be too risque for the Butlins family audience. It's a tricky line, and one best approached with tongue firmly in cheek, such as this example from Hughie Green at Butlins in Bognor in 1973.
Now this time I want all the boys to put all their arms, we've got boys or octopi here, all your arms around the girls next to you, and I want you to sing and look into their eyes. Yeah, oh look at them all looking into their eyes already. And this time it's You Made Me Love You.
Today it's even tougher to provide what's deemed to be acceptable humour. Tommy D runs a comedy talent agency, supplying acts to holiday parks around the UK.
The family audience is anything from, you know, baby up to grandma, all in the venue at the same time. So I feel sorry at times for the stand-up comic side, because everybody still likes to have a laugh and have a comic on, for sure. But, you know, they're harder to entertain because you have to be so politically correct. You know, once somebody gets on stage and gets into their act, you can't, it's like walking on thin ice, because you've got an audience there of potentially up to 1,200 people in front of you on these parks, and if you're watching the comic on the television with your family and something gets, you know, out of hand and the swear words start or whatever, you have the option of switching it off or changing channel. But when you're in a family environment on a holiday park, you know, the only way of switching it off, unfortunately, is to take the gentleman or the lady off in the nicest possible way.
But despite their strong comedy heritage, and being the breeding ground for talent such as Dave Allen, Jimmy Cricket and my dad Jimmy, the comedy part of the holiday camp tradition is slowly dying out. Here's Butlin's entertainment manager, Matt Rake.
That was very much the TV, and what was relevant then was very much about that. However, we have actually a comedian here once a week, and it's more of a variety sort of show as opposed to here's a comedian.
In the 1950s, Billy Butlin hit the magic figure of 1 million visitors a year. But this was the holiday camp tipping point. In 1966, Billy opened his 9th and final camp at Barry Island and retired just 2 years later. His son Bobby took over the running of the business, but that early holiday camp glamour had long since started to fade. Overseas travel was becoming cheaper and more accessible, and people no longer wanted to holiday en masse. A series of Butlin's ads tried to change perceptions, but even the actors don't seem entirely convinced.
Here's your tea, Miss Sales. Oh, thank you. Gosh, isn't this exciting? I do envy you your job. Serving tea? But at 20,000 feet. Yes, I must admit, I do love it. And I suppose for holidays you can stop off anywhere you like in the world. Well, I could, but I don't. I always go to Butlin's. Instead of Honolulu? Yes, you see, Butlin's can never be a letdown. Stop the plane. I'm getting off for Butlin's. Well, not this trip, perhaps, but next time. Well, if you like Butlin's, I'm sure I would.
In 1979, the last ever Wakey Wakey call was played.
Get up, get out, enjoy your holiday.
The music for the Wakey Wakey call changes every couple of seasons. This morning, and for the last time ever, it's the theme from the film The Deer Hunter. Managing Director, Bobby Butlin.
Well, over the last few years, we've been converting a lot of our accommodation to self-catering. And, of course, it's now not nearly so important that people arrive on time for their meals. It's the end of an era, and I think the only people that will probably miss it are the music hall comedians who love to talk about the wakey wakey at Butlin's.
Callanox, you must break all records. This is your 87th visit to
Yes,
Butlin's.
that's true.
So you must be the expert on the Wakey Wakey call.
That's true.
Do you like it?
Yes, I do. It's like Big Ben to you. I think it's a bit of a disappointment if they take things like that away, because these are part of what you might call a kind of home life here.
Another tradition that's disappeared is goodnight campers. For Johnny Ball, it was a fitting end to redcoat duties.
Goodnight campers used to finish, and we had never stopped all day, and we'd creep back into the bar, and all the free drinks we got filled the top of a baby grand piano, and my mates and I would sit under the piano and drink the beer. And it was shorts and whiskies and all kinds of things that people had bought as drinks. So Friday nights, I used to crawl out of that bar at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Heidi, hi!
Howdy ho!
If you're feeling lonely, get me in a stew. Bend your ear, come over here, and man, here's what to do. If you got the blues, I got some news. Join in the party, blues break to do the holiday rock. I'll do the holiday rock. Heidi, 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 holy, holy, ho, 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 do the holiday rock.
By the time Heidi High appeared on our TV screens in 1980, the holiday camp heyday was well and truly over. Written by David Croft and Jimmy Perry, the latter had been a redcoat and turned Butlins and Sir Billy into Maplins and Joe Maplin in the fictional seaside town of Crimpton-on-Sea. Redcoats became yellowcoats, and camp traditions and quirks were amplified for comic effect.
May we have quiet, please? Mr. Federer has a very important message from head office.
Well, it's from Joe Maplin. It's in his own words as usual, so I'll read it out. Right, you lot, get a load of this. I come down yesterday, got up as a camper. You're a shower. You're a load of idle stink pots.
The inimitable Heidi High. But having spent the best part of 3 decades out in the cold, is it time we reappraised the value of holiday camps? Designer Wayne Hemingway thinks so.
At first, when you start thinking of Butlins, you think of Nobbly competitions and announcements, hello campers and all of that kind of stuff. And it's only when you kind of get that out of the way that you actually look back and think, wow, there was some of the most cutting-edge design that Britain has ever seen.
Dennis Hardy.
And it is easy to look back and laugh at regimentation, to laugh at the crudity of it all, but they belong to a particular period. An enormous number of people went to them. I know it's very hard to quantify, but some people say as many as 1 in 4 people in the population actually had at least a week in a holiday camp. It was a big thing for a lot of people.
When the camps became unfashionable, probably in the late 80s, it was probably the fact that they forgot what they were there for. This is a holiday camp, you know. They've got to have fun. They've got to have shawadi-wadi playing. They've got to have things you can think. Well, 3 or 4 days there, you know, I can forget about being cool for a little while and just let myself go. And everybody likes to do that.
Alvin Stardust.
They specialise, of course, now in these weekenders. You get 5,000 to 7,000 people turn up at holiday camp, and all day long they're walking around with like fuzzy wigs on and satin flared trousers, and it's like watching loads and loads of people look dressed up like Sweet or Slade or the Rubettes. You know, the curtains open, you hit the stage, and they're there right in front of you and ready to rock. We should be very, very proud of the fact that we've just managed to claw it back before we lost it altogether.
I've got some mascara for my eyes.
James, Wayne, Jamie and Ian are a Take That tribute band, Beautiful World.
Long moisturiser, tinted moisturiser. It's a foundation as well, and it's really, really good. It just wipes out all your flaws, and then we just add the bronzer on top, and we're done.
Their pre-performance regime is a little more sophisticated than days gone by, but they still view this as a good start to a life in showbiz. Bourne Leisure, the current owners of the Butlins chain, have shown their confidence in the act by booking them to do the circuit this summer, and they'll play all 3 remaining parks in Bognor, Minehead and Skegness. This could be their big break.
1, 2.
Sometimes I see your face looking at me, oh, your love and grace, smiling at me, oh, the things we had but never understood. At times it cuts me up.
I used to do bar sing songs when I was at Vercelli and loved them, and I used to sing very well. But I had a great mate at Butlins who was just a magnificent singer. I heard a recording of his voice only 2 years ago, but that was when he died, and it was the saddest thing I ever heard, because when we were at Butlins, we were in our prime in terms of the enjoyment of life. Great times.
Waiting here for nothing, I should be up all night with you.
Yeah, wicked. That's cool.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely fine. Have a good one.
All right.
For great sketch shows.
That was the radio documentary called Happy Campers,
Happy Campers, the story of British holiday camps, as broadcast on the BBC Radio on August 31st, 2010. Next hour, we will be looking at the American Comedy Network.